What's up guys, FluxedEdge here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I created this underwater split view. I'm going to be primarily focusing on the water itself, not really the glacier. If you guys want to know how to make this, I can show that in another tutorial, but I just want to quickly go over this. So let's get started. To show you here, this is the actual scene and how it's all laid out. It is all one render. It's not photoshopped or manipulated. The only thing I did in Photoshop was added the boat and the little diver because they're kind of an afterthought. And I also blurred this front edge here to make it look like it was close to the camera and kind of out of focus. As you can tell here, it's not really the case. So first, let's create a new scene. And then I'm going to set up my Octane viewer. So I'm going to go to path tracing, that way you can see through the water. I'm going to change this to 3500, as there's going to be a lot of noise in the volume material, which it is a volume material. It's not a volume object, which is what I initially tried to create. It was kind of trial and error getting this to look right. And I'm just going to say, your results might not be exactly the same just because there's a lot of tweaking involved in getting the camera and the landscape and everything that I'll show you to get it right. So it might not look exactly the same, but you'll just have to play with it until you get it. But I'm going to change the GI clamp to 2, eliminate any extra fireflies or lighting specs, and then close that. I'm going to render this just so it's cleared. Now, first thing we want to do is grab a landscape object, and I start with this because it's already got a nice base, and you don't really have to do a lot for the waves. Uncheck borders at sea level, and as you can see what I'm talking about, this already looks kind of like an ocean. Let's get a daylight in here. I'm going to just tilt this so you can see it a little better. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a camera, Octane camera. I'm going to make this, I'm going to zero it out. I'm going to go inside of it. And then I'm going to zero all this out too. Oops. Now, as you can see, our camera is right in the middle of this otherwise wave, and they're way too high. So we're going to go into the landscape object and change the height to something like 10, and then we're going to change the scale to 1.05, just give it a little more height in the actual ripples and waves, but not overall height to where it's going to be ginormous waves. Now this is what I first tried when I was creating this. If you notice, we're in this very split view. We have an under and an over, but our actual Octane viewer is not under and over, it's just over. Now I can lower this a little bit by dropping the Y. Oops, that's the daylight. Drop the Y, and as you can see, I'm now below it, but you only see below. So we're going to do negative 0.01 and 0.05, and again it's still split, but you can't see under it. So basically what I'm saying is no matter what you do, you aren't going to be able to adjust your camera to see under and above when you're in the middle of the material or in the object like this. So what I'm going to do is change this back to 0 on the camera, and then I'm going to drag my camera straight back to the edge of the object. And now you're going to see that we're looking below and above, because otherwise you won't be. Doesn't matter what you do, you'll always be on top or below, but never see both. So you have to go to the edge. Now you can adjust your camera, make it go this way or that way, and I'm going to just leave it in the middle, and I'll show you why. Now the problem is this daylight. Obviously, we don't want this black back down here. We're going to see, or we're going to add an HRI, but for now I don't want to see it because it just causes issues. So if you click on the Octane daylight tag and then you go to the ground angle, which you may have to drop this down, and just raise that all the way up to get rid of that black shadowing. We just want it all the way gone. Now, we want to be able to have a solid ocean that we're looking into. First thing I tried was an Octane fog volume, and that doesn't work because the fog volume and the surface is separated. We want it to be all one. So what I did was I first duplicate your landscape object. That way you have a backup in case you mess anything up or don't like the results. Which I just hold. I hold Control and I drag. And then I'm going to hit C on my keyboard to make this object editable. And I'm going to go to the polygon editing mode. Select all of your polygons, right click and hit extrude. And we want this to be really deep. The reason for, so you don't see the bottom, we don't want to see the bottom of it. We want it to be a really deep, dark ocean. So first we're going to hit create caps. If we don't hit create caps and we do this, we're going to have an open object. It's not going to be solid on top. So we want to hit create caps, and then we want to hit do like -2500. But problem is, if you do that, you get really, really big polygon surface issues, which we don't want. If you scroll back and you look at this, you start getting all this like weird folding and tearing in the object, and we want this to be really smooth. So we're not going to do that. What we are going to do, and I'm hitting Control-Shift-Z to reset my view. So we're just going to do -1, hit enter, and then we're going to grab our move tool, and we're going to just drag this down till it gets to around -2500. That way it's just really deep. It doesn't have to be this number exactly, but I just wanted to make sure that I don't see it when I apply the material. So now that that's that way, if we go out of our camera, we can see the polygons are all straight down and we don't have any weird folding or tearing of them. So I'll go back into my camera view, and now we're gonna create the texture. So let me actually rotate this daylight real quick because I don't like the angle it's at. I'm gonna grab my, click on my Octane daylight tag and go into the north offset, and I'm just gonna want it to be over, kind of over here. There we go. So create material, shader, Octane material, double click that, make it a specular. I'm gonna drag it on and drop onto the landscape. The first thing you're gonna notice is all this weird reflections. See these sides right here? Those are the corners of this landscape object. We don't wanna see that. So we're gonna drag the index down until it's a little less reflective. So I'm gonna do 1.005. That way we still have the surface reflection, but we don't have a lot of reflection inside, and as you can tell, we can't really see those corners anymore. Next, we're gonna change the transmission, which is basically the color that's transmitted through. I'm gonna leave this white. We're gonna add an Octane gradient, so we have kind of a slew of color. Gonna double click this, make it kind of a light blue, like that, and then we're going to do the dark side, and also we want this to be really, really dark blue, but I kind of want it to be a dark green blue, so I'm going to drag it a little further this way. And maybe this one a little more this way too. And you can do this whatever color you want, but if we're in like an Arctic frigid ocean, I want it to be kind of a deep blue. So now is where the volume, the scattering comes in. So we're going to add a scattering, click in here, change the density to 5.5, leave the volume step, and we're going to add a scattering Octane float texture. Change this to 1. You can play with these values and do what you want, but this is just what I was using, and it took a lot of trial and error. So if you want it to look pretty similar to what I did, you'll just make it the same way. And then for the absorption, we're going to add an RGB spectrum, and you can already see we're getting the look that we want. So I'm going to leave this white, and then I'm going to change my phase to -9, or give or take. And this, the further this way you go, the less light you're going to let through. The further this way, the more light you're gonna kind of let through. But negative 0.09, no, negative 0.9 I think is about what I had it set at 92. So we're not having as much light, and that's because the Octane daylight's too low. So I'm gonna rotate this back up, and then I'm gonna change the north offset a little bit. Now you can really see inside the water. And another thing is that we have a like pretty hard edges in the water, and we want that to be a little softer. So I'm gonna add a subdivision surface to this. And then we're gonna create the bump. So this will add more texture to the water. So I'm gonna go to bump, texture, Cinema 4D, Octane noise, click in this, leave it purlin, change it to 4, change this to like 0.55, the gamma to like 0.38, and we're gonna leave the contrast the same. Then I'm gonna make this cubic and add a UV transformation. I'm gonna drag this down a little bit. It's just to adjust it to the scale that I want it to be. So right now this water looks a little weird, and that's because of the position of the sun. So let's go ahead and just adjust this again. I'm gonna bring this like all the way back around. Okay, so like here. Now it already looks better. And like I said, some of these things are very, very like specific on the settings. It depends on where everything's placed for it to look right. Then we're gonna just rotate the sun a little more. I want it to be higher in the sky. There we go. And we can turn this north offset a little bit more. So now as this renders, you're really gonna, the water just looks so much better now. These lines right here are, once again, they're the corner of the object. They're the corner of the whole landscape object where we extruded it. So you can you can crop this out or just zoom in, or alternatively just make your landscape object bigger so it's not within the scene. But I think it might always, you'd have to make it wider. You couldn't make it longer. If you make it longer, you're gonna have the same issue. But if you make it wider, you're gonna have less of a problem. Let me change my aspect ratio to 1080 by 1350. There we go. But now you really, really have this like nice underwater view and this nice above water view. And like I said, in Photoshop, you can blur the edge so it looks like it's a little closer to the camera. And I actually want to raise the camera just a little bit. I'm going to zoom in to this, because I want a little less of this right here. And now you can right-click the camera, Cinema 4D tags, and do protection. That way you can't accidentally move your camera around while you're viewing it. I usually just duplicate it, but this works a lot better. That's pretty much it. But if you put an object into the water, you're going to see that it's above and below, and it just looks really, really, really nice. You can do this on shallow waters, and like I said, just make sure that you put the base in the water yourself and don't rely on the bottom of the ocean. So if I were to drag this down, oops, and make it borders at sea level, make it like 5, you can kind of see that now I have a bottom of the ocean. If you add texture to it, it'll only add to the detail. But I'm not going to go very much in depth. I just wanted to show you this. Now you kind of have a sandy bottom. It's super basic, but yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or need me to go through something different, like and want to see the glacier or something, just let me know. You can adjust the sun to get a different view, but you might lose some of the detail in here. Oh, one other thing that I did that I do want to mention is I had bubbles in the water. They're very subtle, but there's a really easy way to do this. Just create a sphere, make it like, I don't know, 0.05. I'm gonna drag it all the way forward towards my camera so I can actually see it. Turn the cube off. And then I'm gonna create a new Octane material. Double click, go to specular, place that on the bubble. And then I'm gonna grab MoGraph cloner, drag this in there, do a grid array, make the distance like 10 because we're working on a smaller scale. So now I'm gonna change these to 5, and I am working in inches. Normally it's centimeters. I changed it for a project I needed to scale. But hit fix cloner, or uncheck fix cloner, that way it brings it all to where I dragged it up front. And then I'm gonna go into MoGraph with cloner selected and hit effectors, random. This is gonna randomize everything. Wait for it to update. There it goes. And then I'm gonna change this down to, actually let's do 5. 5, change the scale, uniform, and then we're gonna hit 0.025. So some are smaller, some are larger, and now we just need to drag this down into the water. Still got some up. So now you have these, once this renders out a little bit, you have some slight bubbles in the water. And I might just lower this back to 3 because that's a lot. I don't want that many. And then to denoise this a little, let's go into the camera, enable the camera imager, and hit lower this spectral AI denoiser, hit enable. Then you want to make sure you hit the noise volumes. I'm not sure if this is actually considered a volume or not. I don't think it is, but I just check it anyways. Otherwise it might not get denoised. But also I always uncheck denoise on completion, because when you have denoise on completion checked, it uses a lot of RAM either way, but it won't actually denoise it until the end of your render. So once you hit render, it'll wait until it's completely rendered out and then it will denoise it. And I feel like, at least on my system, if I try and render something, it uses, like I said, it uses system RAM. It doesn't use your VRAM. That it might crash when it gets to that denoise. So it would, like if I had an 8K render, it would render out till the end, and I would wait, however long, hours, if that, and it would start to denoise, and it would crash. It would just stop because it didn't have enough memory after rendering to actually denoise it. So I always just uncheck denoise on completion. That way it'll denoise while it's rendering and not after the render. But as you can see, this is going to render out 3,500 frames, and then it'll create the denoise. And we got those bubbles in there, and it looks pretty clean. But yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on YouTube, or if you want to join my Discord server, I answer pretty quick on here. So you can see we have quite a few members now, but people ask questions all the time, and I usually try and get back to everybody as soon as I can. But everybody's really helpful on the server. We all, put some effort into this and add new materials or samples or just general questions and feedback. So if you want to join, please do so. And yeah, thanks for watching.